Evanescence is a force to be reckoned with. An iron army led by the warrior queen of rock and roll. They have gone through civil wars, battles with shady industry devils, deaths and rebirths in both lineup changes and the evolution of their sound. And now they've returned with a brand new studio album, The Bitter Truth. And I have it here, their most recent record, the Target exclusive of their most recent CD, featuring covers of The Chain and Cruel Summer, as bonus tracks, of course. But before we get into this, the most recent chapter of the Evanescence saga, we must revisit the past and retrace the steps they took in becoming the absolute legends they are. Evanescence started out from very humble beginnings. Initially, the band only consisted of two members, Amy Lee and Ben Moody, two best friends that loved music, albeit very different sides of music. They met as teenagers at a Christian summer camp. Yes, you heard that right. In only a month, the pair were playing acoustic sets at Arkansas bookstores and coffee houses, and eventually recorded two EPs, Evanescence EP and Sound Asleep EP, which they sold at various local venues in their hometown. By 2000, they released an independent album, Origin, although Amy herself prefers to think of this as a collection of demos. Some of your favorite tracks from Fallen started there: Whisper, Imaginary, and My Immortal. And there's even more beautiful songs on this first venture of theirs, ones that not a lot of people know about, unfortunately. Amy and Ben believed in themselves and their dreams so much, so they put their all, their everything into it. They moved to LA and got an apartment together, working their asses off to try and get signed by a record label, but they didn't realize the battles they would have to fight to get there. In my opinion, girls on pianos are the epitome of rock and roll, but these record labels just didn't agree. In fact, what seems to be most people's favorite part of the song Bring Me to Life, the rapper, Paul McCoy of the band 12 Stones, was a demand of Evanescence's label, Wind Up Records. In my opinion, the original, and the remake Evanescence did for their album Synthesis, are superior to the single version, but again, my opinion doesn't matter. The label was demanding to add a rapper to the band permanently, for Amy to taint all of her songs with that cringe, but thank every god she stood her ground and Fallen was recorded, for the most part, the way she wanted.
Leading you down to my car, where I become so numb without your soul. My spirit's sleeping from my cold until you silently goodbye.
Will Boyd, a childhood friend of both Amy and Ben, entered the fray to play bass for them, and the label gave them a new guitarist and a drummer. These gentlemen are John LeCompte and Rocky Gray, respectively. So all the roles were filled, and they could finally tour Fallen. And speaking of Fallen, it blew up. This album was a worldwide phenomenon. All of a sudden, it was cool to be the weird goth kid. Everyone was listening to Amy's artistic lyrics, her haunting siren song backed by heavy guitars and beautiful strings. The entire world was listening, and Evanescence was born. Everyone in my high school was singing these songs. The people that once bullied me now thought I was cool and took interest in my admittedly cringy emo poetry. For a good few months, I was on top of the world because I was the weird writer kid, just like Amy Lee, the queen of rock and roll, and I made some lifelong friends during that time, all thanks to a shared interest of music. And honestly, if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have ever come out of my shell in high school. I would have still been eating my lunch in the bathroom in 12th grade with no friends if it wasn't for Evanescence. Fallen is a roller coaster ride of emotions, from going under to whisper, every chapter an epic tale of power and emotional chaos, whether it be ire, grief, sorrow, or searching for a meaning in one's life. But if you look closely, the album seems to tell a story, and although I can't find an instance where the band has specifically said so, I do believe, in my own mind, at least to me, the story is that of a fallen angel rebelling against heaven and waging a war with hell. At least, that is what I see in my head when I listen to this album from start to finish. One of my absolute favorite songs to sing in history by anyone, not just Evanescence, Hello, is about Amy losing her sister at a very young age, and to this day I still marvel at how amazingly accurate of a portrayal her lyricism is of the fog in one's mind after losing someone important. It is still, to this day, the only Evanescence song Amy Lee has yet to perform live. How was everyone in the world so enamored by this album, by these lyrics? People that weren't even fans of rock music were singing these songs. They were memorizing these lyrics. They were getting them tattooed on themselves. They were obsessed. Were we all on the same page in 2003 and 2004 where we just needed something more, something deeper? We were craving some kind of authenticity in our lives, some kind of realization, some kind of acknowledgement of the darkness that we all face every day? Or was it just good music? And there was the whole Christian controversy thing going on. Some people assumed that Evanescence was a Christian band, but they themselves denied this. Just because a band consists of people that happen to be Christian doesn't mean their music is Christian. Because I believe if the Christian bookstores that sold this album actually listened to some of these songs, they would have ripped the CD from their store shelves at once. The band won Best New Artist at the 2004 Grammy Awards, much to the chagrin of one 50 Cent. And to the chagrin of one individual who disliked my video on the subject. Amy began a new romantic relationship with Sean Morgan, the frontman from Seether, which resulted in the best rock and roll ballad duet of all time, Fight Me. And Evanescence released Anywhere But Home, a concert DVD and CD which was packed with secrets and behind-the-scenes moments. And they continued to travel the world, spreading the beauty of their music to the broken masses that had been waiting, yearning for their emotions, their lives, their stories to be told, like Amy Lee was telling them. But not everything was as glamorous, as beautiful, as fantastical, as happy, as fairy tale-esque as it may have appeared to be. Amy Lee has always been one of my biggest influences and favorite writers of all time. I understand that writing novels and writing songs are two very different things, but her use of metaphor and allusion is unrivaled in my opinion, and I've yet to hear a song penned by her that hasn't moved me in some way. She is one of the greatest poets of our time. But even during her most successful era with Evanescence, she was shackled by rules, both from her label and her best friend, her bandmate, Ben Moody. And as we all know, when it comes to writing, the rules were meant to be broken. So what happens when those shackles are broken away and the fallen angel can spread her wings again? in my opinion, the best album in Evanescence discography happened. It's no secret that Ben and Amy were fighting quite a lot at this point. I don't want to get into any of that because it isn't my place. I wasn't there, I wasn't involved, and frankly, it is none of my business. All I'm going to say is that Ben left Evanescence and a new guitarist entered the fold. Terry Balsamo. Terry and Amy became quite close. It wasn't long before they began writing together. And without Ben trying to force Amy's creativity into a stifling, radio-friendly structure, she was finally able to set herself free. She was terrified of living up to the success of Fallen, feeling pressure from both the fans and the label to repeat the same tired formula. She went in the total opposite direction and dove headfirst into the freaky art chick inside of her. Amy's #1 favorite artist is Bjork, and that is never as apparent as it is on The Open Door. This album is filled with haunting melodies, absolutely horrifying lyrics, what amounts to a rock and roll girl power diss track towards Sean Morgan of Seether, yes, the guy that she sang Broken with, because apparently he was a douchebag. And even, get this, a song about sex. At least I think it's about sex. It's about lust, definitely. But she could be lusting for a number of things, really. Amy herself says that any of her songs can be interpreted a number of ways, depending on who's listening, so I say Lose Control is about sex. And my favorite Evanescence song throughout their entire discography is on this album. Snow White Queen. This is a horror movie of a song from the point of view of an insanely obsessed fan that seemingly wants to kidnap Amy Lee and enact his own sick, twisted desires with her. And I can't help but feel as if it's so scary because it's true. Amy herself was unfortunately a victim of stalking. A number of celebrities experienced this. Hell, a number of women have experienced this in their lifetimes. Even Bjork herself had an issue with it at one point, an issue that has a very dark ending, mind you. Snow White Queen has inspired so many of my scariest scenes in writing, and I still listen to it to this day when writing horror centered around a female protagonist. It's perfectly creepy at times and downright terrifying once you fully hear the lyrics. You can really feel Amy's fear here. Again, Amy wrote a song for her sister. This time, Like You offers up something akin to survivor's guilt, instead of the death fog I myself am all too familiar with. It is pretty and poetic, melancholy and mild, much like Hello, but much more dynamic in sound. Other dark songs on this album were inspired by Amy's fear of losing a friend. Terry suffered a stroke in the midst of both touring and writing, and Your Star was Amy's response to that crippling, helpless emotion. It seemed she had finally found a real writing partner, one that truly complimented her, and she was just about to lose him. The entire album is nothing short of a dark fairy tale, and the references are there. Snow White Queen, the entirety of the Call Me When You're Sober music video being a play on Little Red Riding Hood, the CD booklet being designed to resemble a children's storybook. Again, like with Fallen, I feel as though there's a hidden story there, even if I, myself, am the one writing the connections between the songs. And it all comes to a happy ending in Good Enough. A beautiful, happily ever after moment about self-acceptance and love, inspired by Amy's real-life husband, who also had a hand in helping her write Evanescence's most popular song, Bring Me to Life. He happened to be her therapist, and I just think that's the most romantic thing I've ever heard. After the recording of The Open Door, Will Boyd bowed out. He said he just wanted to be closer to his family and didn't have room in his life for big world tours. And honestly, I find that completely understandable, and it looks like the band did as well. But around this time, the rest of the band was getting antsy. I can't find a legit reason why Rocky left, other than fan gossip that is frankly misogynist hearsay, but he did indeed leave, right after John, who was straight up fired by Amy, who says it was because he didn't care about the band and was only there for a paycheck, which, in my mind, is completely justified. But once again, Evanescence just consisted of Amy Lee and a guitarist. So, did Amy and Terry get back to their roots? Well, how could they? In the beginning, Amy's writing was under Ben's scrutiny the entire time, and Terry had only recently joined the band. No, they would have to take the pieces remaining and build something new, something better, something stronger, something wild and out of left field that no one would expect. It's funny, I was really into Flyleaf at the time, but I felt bad because Evanescence was my favorite band. It felt like I was cheating on them in some weird sort of way, because I hadn't listened to them in a while and I really wanted new music from them. And I kid you not, right as I thought that, a commercial came on MTV about a behind-the-scenes special for Call Me When You're Sober, and the music video they were shooting for it. The lyrics, "Don't cry to me, if you love me, you'd be here with me," were the first things I heard, and it was the most surreal, weird, scary, glitch in the Matrix kind of thing. It just freaked me out. But I fell in love with that album, head over freaking heels. And to this day, it is my favorite Evanescence album of all time. But that's only because I haven't listened to this one yet. Will it surpass the dark fairy tale magic of The Open Door for me? Well, keep watching and you'll find out. So, after a bit of a search, Terry and Amy finally found some new bandmates. This is Will Hunt on the left, Tim McCord in the middle, and Troy McLawhorn on the right. And why the fuck is Tim McCord so fucking hot? Oh my god. But they didn't seem to have much to do this time around, as Amy wanted to take this next album in a completely electronic direction, much like her idols Portishead and Bjork. About a year of hard work passes, and a few clips are released, showcasing just how excited Amy is about this new music. But the label was pissed. "This doesn't sound like Evanescence," they said. "Scrap it all," they said. "Start over from scratch," they said. And Amy was heartbroken. But she complied and did as she was told with so much wrath and vigor that she and the boys wrote the heaviest album in Evanescence discography at that time. 3 songs were taken from those early electronic sessions and reworked for this heavy album: Made of Stone, Secret Door, and Swimming Home, while a handful of others she kept in her pocket for a rainy day. She called this lonely, forgotten album her broken record, and the pieces of her shattered heart were scattered among its countless shards. Writing was going well, and she was taking even more risks than she did with The Open Door. Instead of holding her back like Ben had always done, Terry was lifting her up, pushing her to experiment more, getting her out of her head. And it really shows. With a shockingly poppy and infectiously addictive hook, one undoubtedly cheered on by Terry Balsamo, What You Want was the album's lead single, and it announced that Evanescence was back with a bang, baby! It was about abandoning the fear, the pressure, the worry about what other people think, and just doing what you want. Once more, Amy wrote a song for her dearly departed sister, but this one was much different than the last two. It acknowledges the sorrow, the hollow left by the absence of a loved one, but it does not linger there. Instead, the other side takes a much more powerful approach, stating the singer's belief in an afterlife with such certainty that it brings a tear to even my eye, a staunch atheist, mind you. The change had an incredible effect on me personally. I had always loved the song, but it never really cut into me until the day I realized that I was in a relationship with someone that didn't love me anymore. 7 years of struggle, of passion, of fights, of fucking, of tearing myself apart just to try and put myself back together in a way that would suit him more. It just all came crashing down once I listened to the song again, and I got chills. I've been screaming on the inside, and I know you feel the pain. You've been dreaming if you're thinking that I still belong to you, and I've been dying because I'm lying to myself. Just chills. That song gave me the strength to pack up, catch a flight, and never speak to him again. I abandoned everything I ever owned that day, as well as everything I'd ever loved, but I had myself. Something I may have lost if it weren't for the lyrics of Amy Lee. During the world tour of this self-titled album was the first concert I have ever been to, Evanescence or otherwise. I took my then boyfriend, yes, the one aforementioned, the one that I ended up leaving, his little sister, and my best friend. This is me on the left, obviously, and my beloved best friend. And I cried multiple times. The experience was amazing. Evanescence played every song from their officially released discography. This includes every song from Fallen, every song from The Open Door, and every song from the self-titled album. It was insane. It was about 2.5 hours long, maybe 3 hours long. It was the best thing. The lights were gorgeous. Amy's voice was godlike. It was perfect. But the coolest part about that entire experience was seeing all the butch biker studs pretending to only be there for their girlfriends. But as soon as Call Me When You're Sober came on, they were screaming the lyrics louder than anyone else in that entire auditorium. Evanescence still brings people together, just like it did when I was in high school. And that just makes me happy. And it seemed like Amy was finally happy as well. It really felt like Evanescence was finally becoming a real family. That's probably why she and the other band members decided to self-title the album, not as a fuck you to past members, but rather a thank you to the current ones. She was finally happy where Evanescence was headed, because you can't be a real band without being friends first and foremost. But unfortunately, soon after that tour ended, Terry decided to leave the band. I assume this is because of his health, but I have no idea if that's true, and it seems as though the internet doesn't really know either. All that is known is that he and Amy are still good friends, and that's all that matters, really. He's been seen in the front row at Evanescence concerts, enthusiastically cheering on his friends from the sidelines as they rock out. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So who's the new bassist? That, my friends, would be none other than Jin Majura, a rock goddess in her own right. But Amy was on the warpath. She sued her label for the rights of the songs she had been working on during her broken record, the one she was told to shelve. But that's not all. Even while Wind Up Records was going through tumultuous changes, the warrior queen of rock and roll was showing no mercy, and eventually she emerged victorious and free. Evanescence is now an independent band, and that new independent band began to tour again. But instead of a normal album, Amy had something incredibly special in mind, and now she had the freedom to do it. Amy Lee, along with Evanescence, re-recorded a number of songs for a new album, which they affectionately called Synthesis. They didn't just re-record them, however. They recreated them from the ground up, using both and only an orchestra and electronic sounds, hence the name. And while I am disappointed that my favorite Evanescence songs, Snow White Queen and The Change, weren't chosen, I do adore this album for what it is, but if I'm to be honest, I really don't find myself popping it into my CD player that often. But the two new tracks, High-Low, which features Lindsey Sterling on her trademark violin, and Imperfection, are perfection. They're amazing to say the least, especially the latter, which features, wait for it, Amy Lee rapping on the verses, and it's so much, much cooler than the rapping on the original version of Bring Me to Life. And the coolest part is that the band learned to play a new instrument in order to play these new renditions live on Synthesis Tour. That is fucking awesome. I don't think I've ever heard of another band doing anything even remotely similar to that. That's the thing, though. A lot of record labels don't want their artists to grow. They want them to remain stagnant, rehashing that same old sound, sometimes their own, sometimes whatever is getting the numbers, over and over and over again, because that's what sells. You ever think, hey, this one song sounds exactly like this other one, and nothing is done about it? No one gets sued, no one gets an extra writing credit? That's because they're mostly manufactured to be the same, because those notes, that melody, that lyrical subject, is what people want to buy at the time. And while sometimes unique, authentic, and powerful things rise to the top and manage to get radio play amongst an ocean of sameness, it isn't very often. And it isn't due to the labels or the radio stations pushing that song. It's because of us, the fans, calling in and requesting those songs like we did with Bring Me to Life, Going Under, Everybody's Fool, and My Immortal all those years ago. Which brings me to this album. This one right here. In my hand! So let's talk about how weird the creation of this one was. 2020 was a shitty year for everyone. Amy, Jen, Will, Tim, and Troy had to learn how to write music together as the family that Evanescence had become, while being completely separate and isolated from one another. But Amy was no stranger to challenging herself and learning new things. Quite the opposite, in fact. The first single from this era, Wasted on You, wasn't meant to be about social distancing and quarantine, but as they filmed the music video, from each of their homes in a family project, mind you, the band quickly realized that the lyrics now had a completely new meaning for them and everyone else. To inspire Americans to vote in the 2020 presidential election, Evanescence released Use My Voice. Although the song itself was inspired by something completely different, using your voice to speak your truth, especially when those around you are lying either about you or to you. In fact, it was inspired by an assault victim during the trial of her case, proclaiming that no one could ever take her voice away from her. The chorus erupts with a chilling chant from many powerful women, something I think is really fucking cool. The newest offerings, Yeah Right, which is rife with bitter sarcasm, and Better Without You, a biting commentary on the music industry and past band members, seem as though they were written together, much like Taking Over Me and My Last Breath from Fallen. But that isn't true at all. Remember Amy's Broken Record? Yeah Right, along with Take Cover, another track on this album, were two of those songs she stuffed away in her pocket for that rainy day. The rainy day is now, folks. The first thing you'll notice on this album is that the songwriting is completely different than Evanescence's other works. Instead of weaving grand tales with metaphors and allusion, Amy Lee goes the more direct route and tells us like it is, even cursing on a handful of songs. That was one of the themes she wanted for her Broken Record, so I'm happy we're getting an album with that kind of lyrical content. Instead of a dark fairy tale, this album is a diary. It's a journal. But so far, it seems to be just as epic as anything Evanescence has ever done. So what is the bitter truth? Amy says that it is the realization that fairy tales aren't real. There's no magical castle, there's no smiling cat to show you the way. Being an adult is hard. Not only do you have to take care of yourself, you have to take care of your family. People die. We're all going to die eventually. There are monsters in this world, yes, but they look just like you and me. Families drift apart, friendships dissipate, love turns to hate if you let it. Magic doesn't exist. I'm not a merman or a vampire or an elf. All I am is human. Human is all I am. I have to say this is quite reminiscent of my experience losing my religions, and you did hear that correctly. I lost 2 of them. And it hurt. My body physically ached for months, and all I could do was cry both times. It's hard when you realize the foundation on which you built your entire life is transient. God isn't real. I wasn't chosen by the goddess Isis to learn how to cast spells and heal people with my hands. But I can heal people with my words. And while there is no Prince Charming that perfectly completes you and agrees with you and is compatible with you in every way, there is love. Real love. It just takes a lot of work. It's like a flower garden, and without time, water, and sunlight from both parties, it will all slowly fade, wither, and die. And while there are no magical adventures, enchanted swords, or dark sorcerers to fight, there is an entire world to explore. And there is evil in this world, and it's up to all of us to fight it. That is the bitter truth. And I choose to stand barefoot on that foundation, cold and hard as it is, covered in stones, rather than being comfortable standing on one made of fluffy pink clouds and sparkles. Because at least I know now I'm not going to fall again.
Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for watching this video, especially if you made it all the way here to the end. I really hope you guys like this one. It's my first in a new series, as well as the first in my rebranding of this channel into one that praises things that I love and admire rather than talking crap about things that I don't. As you can tell, Evanescence has been with me through a lot, and I'm very thankful for Amy and her songwriting, and every member of the band that has been or is currently a member. If you did like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. I really appreciate you guys watching and listening to me. What's your favorite Evanescence song? Leave me a comment down below and tell me. I'd love to hear it. But that's all for me. I'm gonna go listen to my new CD. I'll see you guys next time. I love you. Bye.